A hospital fires a doctor for warning about unsafe staffing levels. A university expels a student for exposing data breaches. The stated mission is patient care or truth, but the first action is always to silence the threat. Why does the institution always turn on the very people it's meant to serve? We're going to trace the incentive wiring that makes this inevitable. Chapter 1. The Fiction of the Mission Statement. We are told institutions exist for a purpose: to heal, to educate, to protect, to innovate. The mission statement is carved in stone or plastered on a website. It's a promise. But if you look at behavior, what institutions actually do when stressed, the mission is often the first thing sacrificed. This isn't about bad people, it's about a simple, brutal hierarchy of needs. For any institution, the primary, non-negotiable need is continuity to exist tomorrow. Every other goal is secondary. You can't fulfill a mission if you're dissolved, bankrupt, or defunded. So a silent, overriding directive is programmed in from the start: institutional self-preservation. Think of it as an algorithm. The system constantly runs a background check. Does this action or person increase or decrease our probability of survival? Not, does this help our mission, but does this threaten our existence? The mission is a goal. Continuity is a prerequisite, and when forced to choose, the system will always protect the prerequisite. This creates a fundamental conflict. The mission often requires transparency, risk-taking, and external criticism to improve. But transparency can reveal failures, risk can lead to scandal, and criticism can damage reputation. All of those things are read by the self-preservation algorithm as threats to continuity. So the institution's machinery instinctively moves to suppress them. The real shocker: this isn't a bug. It's the core feature of how complex organizations sustain themselves, and it sets the stage for every betrayal to come. So what does this self-preservation instinct look like when it has to make a real-world choice? Chapter 2. The Liability Calculus. Let's make it concrete. A mid-level manager at a manufacturing company discovers a flaw in a product that could, in rare circumstances, cause injury. She reports it internally. The institution now faces a choice. Fixing the flaw is expensive, it will cause production delays, and might trigger a recall, a massive hit to finances and reputation. Ignoring it or hiding it is cheap and keeps things running smoothly. This is the liability calculus. It's a cold, often subconscious risk assessment. On one side of the scale, the potential future cost of a lawsuit or scandal if the flaw hurts someone and the cover-up is exposed. On the other side, the certain immediate cost of stopping the revenue machine, spending money, and admitting fault. Here's the twist. The institution doesn't weigh these costs fairly. The immediate, certain costs are vivid and terrifying to those whose jobs depend on quarterly reports. The potential future costs are abstract and probabilistic, and critically, they might land on someone else's watch. A huge discount is applied to future, maybe problems. Furthermore, the person who discovered the flaw becomes herself a liability. She is now a walking repository of dangerous knowledge. She is evidence. The self-preservation algorithm now identifies her as a threat vector. If she goes public, she triggers the very scandal the institution wants to avoid. So the system's response shifts from how do we fix the problem to how do we manage the person who knows about the problem. This is where you see the standard playbook. Isolate, discredit, investigate the whistleblower, not the flaw. Transfer them, offer a quiet settlement with a non-disclosure agreement. The goal is to neutralize the threat and contain the information. The original mission, making safe products, has been completely subordinated to the imperative of continuity. But this playbook requires coordination. It needs people to play their part, which leads to the most powerful force that keeps this algorithm running: the incentive structure for every individual inside the walls. Chapter 3. The Captured Employee. You are an employee. You joined because you believed in the mission. You see the problem. You feel the ethical itch to speak up. What stops you? It's not just fear. It's that your entire personal ecosystem, your career, your mortgage, your family's stability has become dependent on the institution's continuity. Your incentives are perfectly aligned with the institution's self-preservation and misaligned with its mission. Your promotion, bonus, and social standing depend on being a team player, on hitting targets, on not rocking the boat. Raising a red flag is categorized as not being a cultural fit or creating drama. The performance review system is a genius mechanism for enforcing conformity. Worse, you're surrounded by others in the same boat. This creates a culture of complicity through silence. Everyone might privately see the issue, but no one speaks because they assume no one else will. It's pluralistic ignorance. The institution's survival becomes everyone's survival, and dissent is reframed as a form of treason against your colleagues. And then there's the burnout factor. Fighting the system is exhausting. It requires immense personal risk for a highly uncertain outcome. Most people rationally calculate that the cost of fighting is too high, and the chance of changing a giant system is too low. They decide to keep their head down, do their job, and collect their paycheck. They become effectively captured. The system doesn't need villains. It just needs normal people responding rationally to the incentive structure it has built. The manager who buries the report isn't evil. He's protecting his department's budget and his team's jobs. The HR officer who facilitates the quiet exit is following procedure to avoid legal exposure. They are all following the script written by the self-preservation algorithm. But if everyone is incentivized to go along, where does the pressure for change ever come from? The answer lies outside the system, in a force the institution is desperately trying to manage. Chapter 4. The External Shock, the Only Cure. Internal reform is incredibly rare. Why? Because the people who would have to champion the reform are the same ones whose power and status are built on the current, self-preserving system. Asking a leadership team to dismantle the mechanisms that protect their authority is a paradox. Therefore, meaningful change almost always requires an external shock. A scandal so public it cannot be contained. A regulatory hammer so heavy it threatens dissolution. A financial crisis so severe that bankruptcy is imminent. The external shock must make the cost of continuity under the old rules higher than the cost of change. Look at any major institutional turnaround. The Ford Pinto case changed automotive safety. The 2008 financial crisis barely changed some banking regulations. The Catholic Church abuse scandals forced limited transparency. In each, the institution's carefully built containment failed. The liability exploded from a potential future cost into a present existential cost. The external shock resets the liability calculus. Suddenly, the cost of hiding the truth, total collapse, criminal charges, permanent brand destruction outweighs the cost of admitting failure and reforming. The self-preservation algorithm is forced to recalculate. Now, survival requires change, transparency, and sometimes even purging the old guard. But this is a brutal, inefficient, and often tragic way to achieve accountability. It means problems fester until they explode, harming countless people along the way. It means the institution learns only through near-death experiences, and it creates a perverse cycle. Institutions spend more and more energy, not on their mission, but on preventing the external shock, on PR, legal fortifications, and political lobbying, further entrenching the self-preservation instinct. So, is there any way to build an institution that doesn't eventually eat its own? The answer isn't about better people. It's about hacking the algorithm itself. Chapter 5. Rewiring the algorithm. If you lead, work for, or invest in an institution, your goal shouldn't be to find perfectly ethical heroes. It should be to rewire the incentive structures so that protecting the mission is the best way for the institution and the individual to survive. First, decouple individual success from institutional silence. Create formal, protected, and rewarded channels for internal criticism. Whistleblower protections are useless if the whistleblower's career is still dead-ended. Bonuses and promotions must have metrics for ethical stewardship and risk identification, not just for hitting financial targets. Second, introduce calculated friction. Mandate external, third-party audits with real power. Install governance boards with true independence, not comprised of friends of the CEO. Make transparency a default setting, not a crisis response. This makes hiding failures harder and more costly than addressing them early. Third, simulate the external shock. Run regular, brutal stress tests. Red team your own organization. Ask, what if this failure was on the front page tomorrow, by making the potential future cost vivid and certain in the minds of decision-makers today. You can short-circuit the tendency to discount it. For the rest of us, our role is to be the constant, credible threat of an external shock. This means supporting independent journalism, demanding regulatory teeth, and shifting our loyalty from brands to principles. An institution that knows it can be held accountable from the outside is one that will police itself more seriously on the inside. The unresolved tension remains. No institution can function without a drive for self-preservation. The goal isn't to eliminate it, but to cage it, to force it to align with the mission through relentless pressure, transparent design, and the constant knowledge that failure to do so will be fatal. The moment an institution feels truly safe from external accountability is the moment its mission begins to die. The central question for any society is this: how do we build systems where the easiest way for an institution to survive is to actually do the job it was created